What is up, Steelers Nation? Thank you so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. I'm Noah Strackbine, joined always by my man in the corner, producer Nick Belsky. Find us on youtube.com/All Steelers Talkers. Subscribe anywhere you get your podcast, the Pittsburgh Steelers. We have a lot to talk about. Obviously, Naji Harris is talking and continuing to talk. Justin Fields reveals why he left the Pittsburgh Steelers, and it brings up more questions about whether or not the Pittsburgh Steelers are a real destination at this point. An update on Aaron Rodgers, a guess on Aaron Rodgers that just makes you go full circle in this conversation and ask the question, have the Pittsburgh Steelers officially lost it? Are they on the outside looking in of the NFL's elite? And to be more just brutal on the situation here, are they becoming one of the Cleveland Browns-ish types of teams in the NFL? We'll dive into all that plus more. Shout out to all our members and our super chatters, as always. Nick, it's a rainy one here, but it's cool. I'm in Florida in 2 weeks. I'm counting down the days every single day, so we're getting there. How you feeling, my friend?
I'm feeling good. I'm sad to hear that it's raining up there. I was literally getting ready to say the sun is shining and I'm getting ready to head to the driving range after this one. But I guess I won't rub that in your face too much.
Yeah, that's all right. You enjoy it. You've a good time. It was 80 degrees here yesterday, and today it decided it was a little bit of I apologize. I just got a text that I had to make sure that I read real fast. It's today's a little rainy, but we'll get through it. We'll keep it trucking. Again, owners meetings in 2 weeks. West Palm Beach, fantastic food, free coffee. You know what I mean? There are a few things in life that I need outside of free food and free coffee and some sunshine. So we'll get it. Let's talk some Pittsburgh Steelers football here. We'll start with Aaron Rodgers. The update that continues to be the same update, but new updates and variations of the same predictions and so on and so forth. This time it's Diana Rossini, who made it very clear on the Dan Patrick Show that she is not making a prediction, that this is not a report. It is simply a guess. And that guess is on where Aaron Rodgers ends up this offseason, on top of where Russell Wilson, maybe Jameis Winston, Joe Flacco all end up. The Giants are expected to land one of those two. The Minnesota Vikings are expected to land the other. And the Pittsburgh Steelers are left stranded here looking at nothing. Her latest guess on the Aaron Rodgers saga is that it ends in Minnesota with Aaron Rodgers signing with the Vikings. Now, you could look at Mike Florio, who has also said that this could wait months. I watched the Pat McAfee show every single day for the last 2 weeks. I have not turned that from 12 to 3:15 when it ends. My television right there is Pat McAfee show. And anytime something interesting pops up, my head just goes. And then we listen. They even sound like it's no guarantee Aaron Rodgers makes this decision anytime soon. And they feel as if retirement is on the table and waiting it out for a team like the Minnesota Vikings is still on the table. The Pittsburgh Steelers seem to be losing this thing fast. Now, yesterday, I said on this show that the Steelers are confident and still optimistic that they're Aaron Rodgers' best option. But we're going to talk about all of this and how maybe the Pittsburgh Steelers are not anybody's best option at this point in their history or within the NFL or whatever. Maybe the Pittsburgh Steelers have run their course, and the charm that they think that they carry, that guys like Chad Ochocinco is saying that they still do carry, isn't there anymore. Maybe everybody wants to go somewhere else because of different reasons. A couple of those reasons could be very clear. Naji Harris is out here talking about everything when it comes to the Pittsburgh Steelers and how they are pretty much a second-class organization. They are no longer here. They are not amongst the elite. You can't even come close to the Los Angeles Chargers, Alabama football, wherever he went to high school. Doesn't matter. You are Pittsburgh Steelers and what they've done. Nothing. Justin Fields is over here. And again, we'll get into detail of both of these, talking about why he left, and why he left is because of another coach, not Mike Tomlin. And who's the guy who's constantly bringing people in that we are constantly talking about? That's the reason people would come here. It's Mike Tomlin. Now we're sitting here going, the Pittsburgh Steelers are confident that they have him. They believe Aaron Rodgers is going to sign with them. Cam Hayward's over here saying, we're the Pittsburgh Steelers. You want to come here or you don't? Doesn't matter. We want volunteers, not hostages. It's been a while since the Pittsburgh Steelers have had some volunteers, some big, splashy, ginormous volunteers. They've had some Russell Wilsons, but we are a year removed, and hindsight being nobody else wanted Russell Wilson. Not that splashy. They got Justin Fields. I think Justin Fields had a different understanding of what was going on here. And I think since then he has become the other side of it, saying the Steelers are not a team that I or many others would love to go to. And now it's Aaron Rodgers going, what sounds better to me? A summer in Latrobe, terrible facilities, a team that can't win a playoff game, a head coach that I have a ton of respect for, but thoughts around the league are less and less that he is this big powerhouse of a head coach that draws people in, ownership that might not be doing enough for their players and might not even be trying to do enough for their players, a coaching staff that is middle tier most of the time, and they got a guy in Arthur Smith now that you're hoping is turning it around, but you never know. Or does spending a summer in Cabo, spending a summer wherever the highest paid player in NFL history can afford to go for however long he chooses to go, because again, he's the highest paid player in NFL history, and then maybe waiting it out for the Minnesota Vikings or any other team that calls him in August and says, hey, we actually do need a quarterback. We really desperately need you to come. Again, I'll remind everybody, Brett Favre signed in Minnesota in August. And nobody saw it coming, but everybody at the same time did see it coming. Aaron Rodgers right now is something we're all trying to avoid. Public statements are being made. The expectation is now changing from Pittsburgh to Minnesota, getting a little confused or concerning. I would say that. Are your expectations that Aaron Rodgers ends up in Pittsburgh lowering as well, or do they remain the same?
I mean, it's wild that they threw out there a day after the Vikings publicly said, nope, J.J. McCarthy's our guy. A day later, Diana Rossini is saying, it's probably going to be Minnesota. I mean, that just goes to show you that nobody outside of Aaron Rodgers has any idea what Aaron Rodgers is thinking right now. Personally, the way I look at this is Minnesota, if they want to go get Rodgers in August, sure. But it feels like the other two teams, the Steelers and the Giants, are not going to wait that long. It would be horrible for both franchises to wait that long. So if that's what's starting to become the sentiment, then it does feel like Aaron Rodgers is not going to end up on the Steelers, because they're going to move on. They're going to have to move on. Eventually, you need to make a decision, and that decision needs to come before the NFL draft. That is the hard and fast deadline. You would hope that we would get a resolution before that, but the longer it goes and the closer we get to the draft, the more realistic it is that Aaron Rodgers is not coming to Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I agree. I think the NFL draft is, at least for us, for me, you, and probably everybody else watching the show, is the NFL draft. I don't know if that's the Pittsburgh Steelers, and that's where I kind of find myself in this entire situation. Is the Pittsburgh Steelers are on the verge of being the last team without a quarterback. You want to know who this kind of sounds like? It kind of sounds like the Cleveland Browns, where you don't really know who's going to lead that team. You don't know what these answers are. They're just pushing it off and pushing it off and pushing it off and telling everybody the grass is green. We're fine. Flowers are blooming. Everything's good here in Pittsburgh. Nothing's good. Nothing's good. You have no idea what direction your football team's going in. And if it ends up being Russ ends up in New York, and the Pittsburgh Steelers are sitting around on April 28th going, we still don't have a quarterback, you now have all the decisions to make from the worst players available. And you have found yourself once again in the wide receiver market. This time it's at quarterback, which could get way worse, which again brings up the big question of whether or not the Pittsburgh Steelers are becoming that laughable team in the NFL, that team that does not have the respect factor that I think everybody believes they once had, that I have been pounding the table for months saying that they still have. Well, they are proving me wrong by the day, to be very real. Every single day that this passes, every single day that you look at it more and more and go, the Steelers are being just strung along in this situation. Because if they were the heavy favorites, if it was everybody is on the same page, Aaron Rodgers is coming to Pittsburgh, it's just a matter of when. There's an argument to be made of, yeah, all right, look at they look like they look a little soft, you know. They look like that they're getting drug along here by Aaron Rodgers, that he's playing them like a fiddle a little bit. But at least we all know the outcome of this one. But every time that this goes, you know, Tom Pelissero's report yesterday, how does it end? It ends with, for the time being. I mean, that's not forever. That doesn't say forever. Door is not closed, slightly cracked, pretty close to shut, not shut. Diana Rossini saying she's guessing that he ends up in Minnesota. Every time that stuff happens, it looks more and more like the Pittsburgh Steelers are getting strung, like they're getting fooled, played by Aaron Rodgers. They look worse and worse publicly in this situation. And I get it, the Steelers don't care about their public perception, but maybe they should start. Why? Let's dive into some examples here. We'll start with Justin Fields.
Can I say something real quick? As
Yeah.
far as the laughable side of this entire thing,
Yeah.
I don't think the Steelers will ever become a laughable franchise in the eyes of the NFL. Now, have they lost some respect? Yes. But there's always going to be respect for the Pittsburgh Steelers franchise throughout the league. But it's going to be the respect of like that older guy that can't do it anymore. Like watching Big Ben in his final season is like, man, he used to be great. And we're not going to make fun of him now because he used to be great, but he's not that anymore. And I think that's how the Steelers are viewed right now is, hey, there's respect there because they used to be the premier organization in the NFL. If not the premier, they were top 3 for a long time, decades upon decades. They were that. I think a lot of people are looking at them now and saying, we respect you, but man, we don't take you as serious as we used to. That's like the old man sitting on the rocking chair saying, you had a good run there, old guy, but that run's a little over. We're just going to leave you in the corner there.
All right, I agree with that.
They won't
Maybe
be the
not.
Browns. That's what I'll say. They won't be the Browns.
I think that
there's always going to be more respect for the Steelers because of what's come before.
I agree with that, depending on who you ask. I agree with that, depending on who you ask. If you ask a head coach, great. If you ask Justin Fields and Naji Harris, they'll tell you otherwise. If you ask anybody who didn't sign in Pittsburgh this year because they looked at it and said, why would I sign with the Steelers? I think they'd, you ask a guy that's 22 years old right now, they don't care about the 6 Super Bowls. They care about the fact that Naji Harris is telling them that Alabama's got better facilities. That's where I think we're headed. But I agree with you. Like, laughable might not have been the word, but old guy in the rocking chair losing respect for them. Their respect's it's lowering. It's definitely lowering. And let's use some examples here. Justin Fields asked why he decided to go to the New York Jets over the Pittsburgh Steelers, said, quote, I think number one, it was Aaron Glenn. I've played against him early in my career. I know how passionate he is about the game, the way he coaches, the way his players play. So I think that was the biggest thing for me. And just the opportunity, the fans, of course, the city. When you win here, there's no better place to win. Those reasons are why I ultimately ended up here. You could look at that saying 2 things. One, the Pittsburgh Steelers didn't give Justin Fields an opportunity, which, we're kind of learning that's the truth, that money played a pretty big role. The 2 void years, I think, played a significant role. But at the same time, all the reports, what I've been told, money was not that different. It wasn't significant. I mean, Jeremy Fowler broke this news a couple of days ago saying like, yeah, there's all this talk about the $30 million guaranteed. The Steelers didn't guarantee anything in year 2, but everything was pretty almost even. And the difference might have been the fact that the Pittsburgh Steelers were not guaranteeing Justin Fields a starting job past 1 year, which I think is big. Although now the New York Jets are talking about drafting Jackson Dart, which is just hilarious. And the fact that you benched him after 4-2, and that probably didn't sit super well with Justin Fields, and the fact that he is now so well respected across the league because of that situation not only makes the Steelers look bad, but makes Justin look phenomenal. And Well, he's saying Aaron Glenn's a better coach for me right now than Mike Tomlin, which I think is big. I think you take that into consideration as Mike Tomlin was always the thing that gave the Steelers the upper hand here. Always the, like, okay, but it's still Tomlin. It's still Tomlin. I think that Tomlin had, one winning season, the Steelers are back to that. By winning, I mean you win a couple of playoff games. You look real. The Steelers are back to that. Tomlin's back to that. But we might be hitting the point of the Tomlin effect, not as strong as it once was. And, maybe the Steelers not being as legitimate of a team, legitimate of a contender, legitimate of an organization these days. I think the fact that the NFLPA report card comes out and you could say that's nobody cares. I agree. But I also think that players are looking at it going, oh, yikes. Steelers facilities are bad. And they're ripped apart all the time. Social media is a big thing, man. These things get around. Players are on this stuff, Players come up to me all the time in the locker room and they'll be like, dude, I saw your TikTok about me yesterday. Like, okay. If they saw my face on their TikTok, they saw the ESPN report of how the Steelers have the worst facilities in football. They're seeing these things. I think all of it is starting to add up to a point where maybe the Tomlin effect isn't as strong. We'll start with that one before we go to Najee. Do you agree? Do you disagree? You think Tomlin, not Tomlin himself, but the Tomlin effect is losing its juice?
Yeah, it used to be a tiebreaker. If it was the Steelers or another team, Tomlin would be able, or at the very least his presence would be able to sway people towards Pittsburgh. It's exactly what Deshaun Elliott said last year when he was asked, why did you choose Pittsburgh? He said that logo and Mike Tomlin. That was the biggest factor. It doesn't matter what happened the year before. Doesn't matter that they haven't won a playoff game since we were in college. It's the fact that Mike Tomlin was there and they win football games. Well, they've still been winning football games, but the Mike Tomlin effect is slowly starting to go in the opposite direction. And it's when things happen like benching a quarterback who's 4-2, immediately saying that, well, he was good, but he wasn't great. And then bragging that he made the right call, and that's why he gets compensated so much after 1 week. You end up going 6-6, losing in the first round of the playoffs again. And all of a sudden, you look at Mike Tomlin again and you say, well, maybe that ship has sailed. It's the same conversation we had in the first segment here of, well, there's always going to be respect for Mike Tomlin, but that effect, that present day effect is not as strong and not nearly as strong as it once was.
I agree. And me and you've been the biggest supporters of this is the Steelers and this is Mike Tomlin at the end of the day that holds some ground. I don't know how much ground it holds these days. I think it's shrinking by the day. I think new coaches are exciting. I think that's a big difference here is Aaron Glenn is an exciting coach. That dude's been on a dominant team for the past couple of seasons, but the last 2 years, like the Detroit Lions are a team that you don't want to mess with unless you're the LA Rams somehow in the playoffs. But if you want that team, or the Washington Commanders, it was the Commanders that beat them, right? It was the Commanders. Unless you're that team, you don't want to mess with the Lions the last 2 years. That's a name, Aaron Glenn comes from Detroit, that that. You're thinking of those things. I think that is playing a factor here. Again, he's 1 good year away from getting it back, but that is a piece to the puzzle here that I think, again, is losing its juice. Then there's the other side of this, which this, again, is getting around the NFL. Like people could say, and I have people who tell me constantly, I have family members who are Steelers fans. I live in the city of Pittsburgh, which means anybody I meet ever who knows who I am, which, I went and got my tooth fixed. Do you want to know what we talked about? The Pittsburgh Steelers. This is just what happens. You hear that, the opinions of the Pittsburgh Steelers are getting less optimistic. It's less they could turn it around and more doom and gloom. And I think that's getting around the NFL. Like, I think you got players who were here, who left. Mike Williams made it known last year was the worst year of his life. It sucked. He didn't want to be there. I talked to Mike Williams like a dozen times last year, both on the record, off the record, just hanging out, bullshit and whatever. I watched a 90-second video of this dude touring the LA facility, and I didn't even know he could smile. Didn't even know. I never saw him smile one time. That dude was hilarious. That was awesome. It was a great video. I'm happy that he's happy. There are a lot of people out there who've come through the Pittsburgh Steelers who probably, especially these days with the revolving door of veterans, who probably don't have the highest regard for what happened in Pittsburgh while they were there, on top of downfalls like losing 5 in a row to end the season, on top of not winning a playoff game in 7 years, on top of, quarterback controversy, on top of a terrible offensive coordinator that you could say whatever you want, but even Naji Harris, who we will get to in a second, made like that offense was nothing. And he made it clear as day that offense was nothing. Well, you push that out long enough, that becomes a thing. You know, everybody starts going to these other teams talking. Players hear these things. Hurts the reputation of players or of an organization who are trying to recruit these players every offseason. Najee says this when asked about his time in Pittsburgh. Quote, "My time in Pittsburgh, it was a lot of learning things, a lot of learning experiences. Playing for Mike T, playing in that division, there were a lot of ways I didn't even realize what the NFL was really about until I came to Pittsburgh. I don't want to get into detail with it, but I feel there was a lot of stuff in my game where I could have elevated more and I could have did more. I feel like I just didn't get it done. I feel like I was obviously missing something. It was interesting years there. I'll just say that. Interesting years." He added to it by saying that Ben retired. He had no leadership on that offense because everybody was young. He was trying to learn the NFL game from TJ Watt and Cam Hayward and Minkah Fitzpatrick, and they were only able to tell him so much because they're on the defensive side of the ball. I doubt anybody in LA who crossed paths with Naji Harris is going to get a good remark about whether or not they should go to the Pittsburgh Steelers. I don't think that's going to be the case. I bet you there are a lot of players out there who do the same types of things or who say the same types of things. And you just got to, Najee doesn't hold back, you know? You got to start wondering, is this what's being said about the Steelers? And how much... Here's the second question to this. You could talk about Mike Tomlin all you want. You could talk about whatever. Damage control. That's where we're at with the Steelers. I think it's deeper than we imagined it was going to be. Is it bad enough you feel? How bad do you think it is? Let's ask that question. How bad is it? Because you went through the Matt Canada years and you pushed that thing out as long as possible. And you became I'll try not to use the word laughable, but that's how bad that offense was. That was high school, middle school offense, and everybody saw it. Then you don't win a playoff game for 7 years. Everybody is talking about it. Everybody's talking about it. You go through 5 quarterbacks in a matter of 3 seasons. Everybody's well aware of what's going on there. You bench Justin Fields, and then your team looks terrible, and Mike Tomlin refuses to make a change. Awful. You got players leaving because of the coaches, but players leaving because of the organization and the decisions that the organization has made in the past. Awful. And now you're sitting here with the entire NFL world staring at you every single day. My grandmother called me and asked me if Aaron Rodgers has signed with the Pittsburgh Steelers yet. Everybody is watching. Everybody. How much damage is done to the point where, you now have to rebuild it. Damage control has to be a thing, but how deep are we with the Pittsburgh Steelers?
This offseason is certainly taking it to another level. When Steven Nelson says something like this, it rolls off pretty easily. Everybody just says, all right, well, Steven Nelson didn't have a good experience at Pittsburgh. Oh, well, it's Steven Nelson. When Naji Harris starts saying things, when Justin Fields starts saying things, that's when it all of a sudden starts to get deeper and deeper into just the ethos of the NFL, that the Steelers are an organization right now that's flailing. They are not as strong as they once were. They are not a team that is a destination anymore. And the more that people talk about this, the more it's going to get to those players. You mentioned the player report card. Who votes on that? The players. So if you look at it and you say, wow, at least some of the players voted to put that grade on that team and that facility or that ownership group or that strength and conditioning staff. they're going to take that for what it's worth. And then they're going to reach out to players on the team and ask what their opinions were. And they're going to reach out to players who are no longer on the team, but used to be, and ask what their opinions were. And if Naji Harris is saying it in the media, if Naji Harris is saying it publicly, you bet he's going to say it privately. He's going to have no issues about it. That's the one thing, for better or worse, Naji Harris just speaks his mind. It's great because you know what he's thinking. You don't have to try to cut through any bullcrap. It's what he's saying is what he's believing. But at the same time, if you're the Steelers right now, it's a lot of it that is targeted at your organization and not in a positive light. So the more things happen like this, especially from players with such high leverage personalities, guys that are well-known like Naji Harris and well-known like Justin Fields, it hurts. It's not a death blow to the organization by any means, but it certainly doesn't help them.
No. And I'll give some unwarranted advice here to the Pittsburgh Steelers, even though they will not listen to me. You know, every time I'll be in Florida in 2 weeks, week and a couple of days, and I'll be sitting me to this computer screen away from Mike Tomlin and Omar Khan. We cracking some brews and drinking some double Grey Gooses on the rocks and whatever. I'm on a vodka and Diet Coke diet right now because, you know, we can't get fat for the summer. It's not allowed to happen. But especially because my brother's getting married, and you know what I mean? I had the conversation the other day. I can't be the fat brother at the wedding. That's just awful. You guys already convinced me to grow a mullet. It's things are we're walking a line. He will never listen to me, but if they did, they should. And this is what I would tell them. If I'm the Pittsburgh Steelers, I'm giving Aaron Rodgers maybe another week. And that's about it. And then, because at that point, you're looking at it saying, okay, damage is done. Damage isn't going to change in a week. The Steelers aren't going to look any worse 7 days from now than they do right now. But Saturday night, they're going to fly to Florida, and they're going to begin all of their media circus and owners meetings, and things will become bigger. There will be more conversation. We will have opportunities to talk to Mike Tomlin and Omar Khan and Art Rooney, and we'll get to ask them about this situation. And if it is still ongoing, the answers look worse no matter what they are. No matter what the answers are from anybody of those three, it looks worse because you are either making an excuse to say, look, we feel confident Aaron's going to be fine, or we feel confident in our backup plans, or we feel confident in Mason Rudolph if that's the course, or we've done our homework on NFL draft prospects, whatever it is. It looks worse to just say the Steelers are trying to hide the fact that they are being strung along by Aaron Rodgers, which in the future kills all leverage, all that, you know what I mean? You're talking old man in a rocking chair, respect factor. We could go further than that. It's the respect factor of, in the future, everybody else is going to look at you as a team that, like, I'm not in any rush to sign with the Steelers because I could dog them all day. They'll be sitting there waiting for me. The whole time they'll be sitting there waiting for me. This is what this says. And whether it's true or not, people will think that. Players will think that. I think it looks worse. You have to give them a week. In 1 week, before Florida, before the league meetings, you have to have a decision in place on whether or not Aaron Rodgers is your quarterback or not your quarterback. Because after that, it does not matter what it is. It could be Mason Rudolph. It could be the NFL draft. It could be Jameis Winston. It could be Joe Flacco. Any of those answers to go and sit down in front of the media and to say, this is what we're doing, looks better than saying we're waiting on Aaron, because that makes it look so much worse. And now, don't get me wrong, Aaron is the best opportunity for the Pittsburgh Steelers. That one's clear as day. I'm not going to argue against that. I never would argue against that. If the Steelers are thinking Super Bowl in 2025, which they are, and they're going to continue to, Aaron Rodgers is the guy that gives you the opportunity for that. But if you're thinking long-term, if you're thinking respect of the franchise, if you're thinking what does next year look like and how bad can this get because it got way worse, way worse. If Naji Harris leaves and goes to LA and talks smack on the Steelers, Nobody cares. If Justin Fields leaves and says, Aaron Glenn's the reason I'm going, we'll make a big deal out of it, but nobody cares. Nobody cares. If the NFL report cards come out and the Pittsburgh Steelers look awful, again, we'll make a big deal out of it, but nobody cares. But after weeks of just having the magnifying glass on you, all of this just grows and gets bigger and looks worse and worse and worse by the day. That's what this does. Everybody is looking at all the flaws. Everybody's looking at why things are not good enough for Aaron Rodgers. Everybody's looking at where the Pittsburgh Steelers are and why all these players are saying this and why they're leaving. That's why we're having a conversation like this right now. All of that is under the magnifying glass right now. And the longer it is, the worse it all looks. So damage control wise, I get it. You're trying to win a Super Bowl in 2025. But the longer you push this thing off, and if you get in front of a camera next week and say, we're waiting, it just looks worse. And it goes from this to this when you're trying to get it back to this. And if I'm the Pittsburgh Steelers, I'm putting that hard deadline on a week. I don't care what the other options are. You could go to them. Eventually, you're probably going to have to do that anyways. And I'm saying the sooner that we could get this magnifying glass off of us, because if Joe Flacco is the quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers, nobody's talking about it. Nobody's talking about it at all. If Mason Rudolph is the quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers, nobody's talking about it. If they are, look at the Cleveland Browns, okay? Who's their quarterback? Right now it's Kenny Pickett, and people are expecting it to be Shedeur Sanders, but maybe it's not going to be. Maybe they sign Russ. Maybe they go get Jameis again. Maybe Joe Flacco comes back. Carson Wentz was in conversations, I believe, there. Doesn't matter. Nobody's talking about it. Why? Because at least they're looking at it going, it's one of these. It's not the Aaron Rodgers saga. We're not involved in the Aaron Rodgers saga. If the Steelers have any other plan, it looks better than the plan of just waiting for Aaron Rodgers. And again, I don't think it's the best outcome playoff-wise or record-wise or performance-wise or any of that. Aaron Rodgers is your best bet. Publicity-wise, which you need to actually take into account right now because of how bad you look to the entire NFL and to the players involved. I'm not talking about me. I'm talking about the Justin Fields and the Naji Harrises and the players that want to come here like, J.K. Dobbins maybe, or any lineman or any defender or any of those guys. You got to start at some point doing some damage control. That's my warning to the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'd put a hard deadline on next Friday and say, you better have an answer to me by then. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Am I way off base with this?
I mean, I said it yesterday, and I will always go back to this. The most power that you can have is the power to walk away. And the Steelers, as of right now, have shown that they are not willing to walk away from Aaron Rodgers. The thing that I look at is, PR-wise, it'll look bad if he strings them along to the NFL draft. Mm-hmm. But on the field-wise, nothing matters until the NFL draft, in my opinion. When it comes to the quarterback position, you have your week one starter if Aaron doesn't come in Mason Rudolph, and then you're going to pick up your young guy, and you're going to be back to square one, which stinks, and it's still a mishandling of the situation, but you'll have Mason, and you'll have a rookie quarterback. A couple of years ago, you had Mitch, and you had Kenny. You'll be back to square one 2 years later, and you burned those 2 years, and that's not a good look, but it is better than sitting there saying, hey, we are going to wait past the NFL draft, or we are going to wait for Aaron Rodgers. This needs to end by the draft. If it goes further than the draft that they don't get a quarterback, that's when it's burn it down, because they have made themselves look far too weak in this entire situation. I don't think they'll let it get to that. I think if they get to the draft, they will draft someone, whether that is early or in the middle rounds, but they will draft someone and they will run with Mason. And at this point, if Aaron's going to continue to play around past the draft, that's what I'd rather have, is Mason and a rookie. Is it a great situation? No, but it's the situation the Steelers have backed themselves into.
Do you, at what point, why is the draft it? If the Steelers are going to draft a quarterback anyways, you know what I mean? Say they get whoever in the first round or the third round, doesn't matter, and Aaron calls you May 1st. Does that change anything for you? You're out. You're hard out on Aaron at that point.
if he's going to call on May 1st, yeah, maybe it changes a little bit. I'd be receptive to that, but I'm not answering the phone unless he's calling to say I'm coming. I'm not sitting there saying I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait. No, I'm moving on with moves. If I want to sign J.K. Dobbins post-draft, I'm signing J.K. Dobbins post-draft. I'm not saving money for you. And here's the thing. The second the draft happens, your money that you're getting offered from us goes down. At some point, the Steelers need to get back in the driver's seat. And I think that is the turning point where they can sit there and wait all they want until the draft. But once they get to the draft, once they take their quarterback and all of a sudden it's Mason, Skylar Thompson, and insert rookie here, that's when you start to say, all right, Aaron, if you want to come here, the door's still open, but the money you're going to get is going to go down significantly because we're going to move on with our offseason.
All right. I think if I'm going to be honest, I think that's what's going to happen. I feel the Steelers are very confident in the situation, but if I had to guess at what's going on, this is not a report. This isn't even a prediction. If I had to guess what's going on, I would guess that Aaron Rodgers is willing to wait this one out. I would guess that there is some traction from Minnesota. I would guess that, if this was a week ago, it's easy to sit here and say the Steelers, they still have an understanding that they're pretty confident in this situation. Now it kind of feels like false confidence. Just like we're the Pittsburgh Steelers. It's like, yeah, who cares, dude? Whatever. Aaron still has not decided. He doesn't even look like he's going to decide. Everybody every single day is just making this look worse and worse and worse. That's how I view it. I look at it. If I had to guess, I'd just guess that it's going to end up the way you say it is with a rookie, with Mason, and with somebody else. And which I'm not totally sold at Skylar Thompson yet, but somebody else, not Russ. And they move forward and say, Aaron, dude, sorry, buddy. At some point we had to end. At some point it's got to go away. We'll see what happens. Again, if you're listening, Pittsburgh, I tell you right now, Mike T, call him right now. He's not going to answer, but call him and just say, hey, you got till Friday. Give me next Friday. Give me an answer by next Friday. I don't think he would, but I do think it's a conversation worth having. And I also think, everybody wants to talk leverage. Steelers need some leverage in this situation. You do need some leverage. You do. You don't have any, so just create some. Just lie until you have some, because right now you look like you're on your hands and knees begging, even if you're not, like the reports of the 1-year deal, the reports of it's not about money, the reports of all that, like who cares, dude? None of that makes you look better, none of that matters. It doesn't, the Giants don't look any worse that they're offering more money than the Pittsburgh Steelers, it just comes down to the fact that everybody's just sitting here waiting on Aaron Rodgers. And I bet you there are a lot of old heads watching this watching this entire saga going, I never thought I'd see the day the Pittsburgh Steelers are waiting around for a quarterback. It's where we're at. It's where we're at. All right. That's everything on my agenda today. That's my spiel to the Pittsburgh Steelers. And again, if you're listening, Mike T, I'll tell you again next week when, we got a brew in us and a couple of little mini hot dogs or something. I'll let you know. I won't actually do that. But
I was about to say, I don't know about that.
I try very hard not to talk football when I'm around these people in a non-football, when everybody's enjoying themselves, his wife is standing there, my wife's standing there. I'm not like, yo, Mike T, dude, Aaron Rodgers, what's going on there? Just trying to stress you out a little bit on your night off. Although last year they definitely signed Cordero Patterson during this, and I called Omar out on it right as it happened. I said, we were getting a drink. I walked right over to the bar. He was getting a drink. I walked right up to him. I said, who are you signing over there? Who was the guy? And he was like, what are you talking about? I'm like, you and Mike, dude, I watched you. We all watched you. We all watched you get so hyped about whoever you were on the phone with there. He's like, no work. No work here. Not tonight. Tomorrow. I said, all right, don't do that to me. Don't do that to any of us. We're not leaving. So this news doesn't break till tomorrow. He said, nah, there's no news. Guess who got signed the next day? Cordero Patterson. Guess who knew about the signing and everybody else knew about the signing, and nobody was allowed to say anything. Not me, Adam Schefter. I was told that Adam and Ian Rappaport were well aware of the situation, and everybody was just like, hey, could you just wait until tomorrow? That would be super nice if you just waited until tomorrow. And they did, thankfully. But shout out to Omar, man. I still have never had the opportunity to call him out, which I should. which I should. I was face deep in some tiramisu last time we were chatting, and I didn't have time to talk business. All right. Let's finish off the show the same way we do every single day, and that's answering all of your questions. Make sure to toss them in the chat. We'll get to all of them before we head out of here. Shout out to all of our members and all of our super chatters. I appreciate you guys. We both appreciate you guys. Let's dive into it. Nick, what do we got?
Let's kick things off with Smooty Booty, who says, we lost the plot when we lost to Blake Bortles in the 2017 divisional round.
Yeah, that's when it went downhill, if we're going to be really honest. I say this all the time. Not winning playoff games from 2018 to 2024 doesn't matter. Nobody should care. Those teams were terrible. They should not have won playoff games in the first place. It was just a roller coaster ride of getting worse and worse and worse and worse. 2011 to 2017, Steelers should have been and won multiple Super Bowls. And I think 2017 happens. Like 2017 was the year they do win the Super Bowl. But to be very honest, it's not the losing to Blake Bortles. Like, that sucks. Steelers were going to lose that season anyways. The second Ryan Shazier went down, that season was over. Not because of, that's a massive injury. I mean, he was defensive player of the year material. It was, those guys were never emotionally okay after that one. Not the rest of that year. So 2017 was the end of the should have happened. 2011 to 2017 is when you could put the how did you not pull that one off? How did you not get there? That's where, to me, that's when it started getting worse. And then after 2017, the fact that you never gave in to the fact that you needed some massive changes is why we're here. Let's
go down to Steven, who says, need to stop using Band-Aids when they need surgery.
Yeah, in a lot of places. But to be at the same time here, okay, this is, and at the quarterback position, this is the warning. This is the final straw of that's it. You've done it. You've exhausted all options. The roller coaster ride's been crazy. The veteran carousel sucks. You guys look like a complete and utter joke in the NFL right now, currently, today, in this Aaron Rodgers negotiations. You don't look like the Pittsburgh Steelers. You look like the Giants. And, if this was the Giants chasing Aaron Rodgers with the Vikings just standing there going, ha, 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 one day, everybody be like, yeah, dude, the Giants are the Giants. The fact that it's the Steelers, that's a little bit embarrassing. Now, I think they have surgeryed a lot of these positions at the same time. Band-Aid at corner right now, but a lot of things that they've been band-aiding, they have finally fixed slowly to where their team as a whole looks pretty okay. Looks pretty all right. Needs a quarterback. That's your last big surgery here. And it's the biggest one you got to come up with. It's the hardest one to find. It's the hardest surgery to have. You got to figure it out. This is the end of it. They would have kept going if Rodgers was easy or Justin was easy. They would have just kept this thing going. And everybody should be kind of glad that they're not.
Let's go to Chris, who says the Steelers look like clowns simping for Aaron Rodgers.
They really are. I don't think, I think people will forget this in a couple of years, but I think right now there is going to be longer term damage to this situation than anybody is willing to admit. That this is not a one and done situation where it's the Steelers finally get Aaron Rodgers and then everything's fine. Unless they go on to win a Super Bowl or look like a Super Bowl team. If the Steelers win a couple of playoff games and they beat Josh Allen in the divisional round and they win the AFC North and things look great, worth it. Everybody will forget. They go 10-7 and lose in the first round. It's going to get loud. It's been loud. It's going to get loud. I'm talking Duke basketball game loud for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Let's go to ND Joe, who says the Steelers need to spend money to make money. Get the crowbar out and use it on Rooney's wallet. Update those facilities and show a willingness to listen to the players, and morale will change.
Yes, I agree. Here's the only issue. Here's my only pushback when it comes to the facility side of things. And it is in 5 years, I believe it's 5 years, the lease is up at UPMC Rooney Sports Complex, which that's it. In my eyes, it's over after that. You did the Pitt thing. It was cool. You helped Pitt out. It was fun at first. The Steelers next to Pitt. That's cool. City of Pittsburgh. All right, the 15 Pitt fans, man, stop abiding by them. And it is time to go make my life way more miserable to have to drive somewhere else, because Southside is 10 minutes from my house. Easiest drive there is. Smooth in, out. We're good to go. No traffic. Go somewhere else. Build a big, crazy, phenomenal facility. Make it beautiful. In 5 years, if you do that, it's okay. You just had to wait it out. You had to be patient. Everybody could understand that. If you don't and you renew that lease, yikes. Big yikes. You look terrible.
Let's go to Egyptian Roughneck, who says, this is the problem with Rodgers. He thrives on this, and he is definitely loving it while we hate it. Love Mason, or it pains me to say this, but go get Baker Mayfield.
Baker ain't going nowhere. He is in Tampa Bay. Yeah, until he starts to stink in Tampa Bay, which I don't think that's going to happen. Shout out Baker Mayfield. Aaron, look at, I don't know anything about Aaron. And I know that in my experience, a lot of people that everybody tell me I should hate, I've learned aren't that bad of people. A lot of people that people tell me I should love, I've learned are, kind of crappy people, and everything in between. I'll hold off my opinions on Aaron. If I ever get to meet him, which I hope I do, I am excited to meet him and to understand him a little bit more. Watching all of this, it is wild to watch it all. Why? Again, a life I never thought I'd be living, a situation I never thought we'd be involved in, but we're here. We're getting a front row seat to this, and it's one of the most bizarre situations I've experienced in my sports journalism career.
Let's go to Chris, who believes Tomlin is the problem, says the standard is the standard, and in 18 years, he has won Super Bowl. The standard isn't being met. Tomlin has to go, and it's simple.
I don't agree with the whole Super Bowl. He's been to 2 Super Bowls. John Harbaugh's been around just as long. He's won 1 Super Bowl. Nobody's calling for his job. I mean, it's about what you're doing today, not what you did in the past. Mike Tomlin could still be a good coach. He's carried some really, really bad teams to good seasons in recent years. That has to be acknowledged, that these teams have been Think about 2 years ago. That team was awful. God awful. Let's go through them. Eric Rowe, not in the NFL. Miles Jack, not in the NFL. Duck Hodges was the year before, but also not in the NFL. Mason Rudolph carries you to the Super. You had 3 quarterbacks that are all backups on teams nobody wanted anymore. Quarterbacks that have been passed around. Kenny Pickett spent a year in Philly, and they said, "We're good, dude. Tanner McKee is the guy. You're going to Cleveland." Bad teams, and has won some games there. If he could do it again, great. I think he's losing his juice right now, and you have to get it back. You're Mike Tomlin, you could get it back. The only way to do so is to show that you're a winning program, a real winning program, not a 10-7 winning program, and go earn that respect again.
Let's go to Real Ish, who says, I really think Shedeur will fall and be the 21st pick. Chris Sims has him at number 2 of the quarterback class, said he can read and process defenses while standing in the pocket. Yeah,
I mean, look at him. Shedeur Sanders is there at 21. You draft him. You don't even think twice, which would be so awesome. So could you imagine Shedeur Sanders? Look at, again, personally, selfishly, getting Aaron Rodgers and Deion Sanders' son on the same roster. I'm telling you guys, it would be a fun year. We'd have a lot of fun on this show. Maybe not in real life, but on this show, we'd have a blast. Okay. All of you guys, me, I'd bring everything to you. Nick would have to push me back constantly from just overreacting, but it would be a great time. Shedeur Sanders at 21 is a no-brainer. I mean, I think my only thing with Shedeur is the fact that there are questions about, does he stand in the pocket too long? Does he take sacks? But I think he is the number 2 quarterback in this class. I don't even think there's a question there.
Let's go to Lance, who says Jalen Milroe becoming Lamar 2.0. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's a long ways away, but I'm not going to say no. Jalen Milroe has the most upside outside of Cam Ward of anybody in this draft class quarterback-wise. He's also the most raw. It's going to take the most time to develop him. I'll say this. If you want to look at Jalen Milroe as a prospect and the Pittsburgh Steelers want to make it make sense to everybody, the easiest answer is this. We're trying to be a running program. We're trying to be a running football team. We want to win on the ground. Okay, Jalen Milroe could run the football. If you could teach him to pass a little bit, I mean, you could figure it out. If all he has to do is say throw it deep to DK Metcalf or George Pickens or run, it's a pretty simple offense to learn, and I think he could do it. I like Jalen Milroe a lot, actually, a lot, but I don't like him, as a savior. I like him as a risk and a project that you feel confident has enough upside to take a chance on.
Let's go to Broderick, who says, we signed Eccles and Thornhill. Any chance Mike Hilton may be a person of interest? He would be a great mentor for one Beanie Bishop.
I don't know, to be honest with you. Like, Cam Sutton was in the facility the other week dressed in Steelers gear. I didn't think we were able to say that. Then Kaboli said it on a podcast, and I said, all right, well, I acted all, cryptic on my show saying, oh, I can't tell you guys why yet. Like, that was why. I was sitting in the cafeteria and Cam Sutton comes in fully dressed in Steelers clothes, which I love Cam. So I know he had a down year, but he's always been super nice to me. And if that's what they're thinking, it would not surprise me. Super cheap, not going to cost you anything. Maybe he's a year removed from all the drama and the off the field stuff and he's getting better. Who knows? If not, I don't know where they view Eccles. I thought he was an outside guy. Then they signed James Pierre, so maybe he's an inside guy. Maybe he's just competing for a spot. Maybe they want 5. I don't know. Maybe they just are bringing everybody in to say, screw it, we need the best ones available. That's what we're going to do here. Mike Hilton, I think, could be on the board still as things move forward, but the Steelers have shown a lot of faith in Beanie Bishop after that one, especially like they had interest in Nate Hobbs. He went to Green Bay and they haven't shown any interest in anybody else since. So it could be an answer for the Steelers.
Let's go to Carl Spackler, who says, I think Tomlin excels at getting potential out of backups and lower names, but he fails miserably to utilize already blossomed talent to its fullest.
So I don't know if I agree with fails miserably to utilize it. I mean, TJ Watt is electric. Cam Hayward is electric. Alex Highsmith is damn good. Nick Herbig is really good. Minka before the last 2 years was really, really good. George, good. Like you could keep going. I mean, Najee, I think, is 1,000-yard runner. And what did he get out of him? 1,000 yards. Like, I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think the Steelers have failed to find blossomed talent in the last couple of years. They've been underperforming or small, getting potential guys year after year after year. And then they're good enough to win you 9-10 games, but they're not going to win you a Super Bowl. Go look at the Philadelphia Eagles roster. They're 90% of the Steelers starters over the last 5 years wouldn't stand a chance starting on that team, except for Fred Johnson, who was a practice squad guy in Pittsburgh and then ended up taking snaps in the Super Bowl at tackle for the Philadelphia Eagles. Like, the Steelers just have had blossoming players, but those guys that are there, I just don't think they've ever had enough of. I don't think they have enough of them right now, but I do think that they're much closer today than they've been.
Let's jump to Real Ish, who says, I think people need to calm down. Quarterback aside, the other parts are there. Also, They'll have a ton of comp picks next year, 2 defensive tackles, a corner, and a quarterback in the draft. That means they're going to win.
Look, I agree with the rest of the team is there. I do think that the rest of the Pittsburgh Steelers is there. I don't know if George Pickens is going to be around this season, which means that you have a question mark at wide receiver that you have to fill. I think you still need one more defensive tackle, and obviously you need a long-term solution at corner. But the Steelers have faith in Corey Trice, and if they don't, they'd go after somebody next year in the NFL draft or another name in free agency because they'll be able to spend money in free agency. I think the team's there. The offensive line is there. You just got to hope that it works. If it doesn't work, you start from scratch and you start to fill in the places that didn't work. But you put the pieces there. You built it. You built the structure. Now you just have to see if it holds up. You have tight ends. You have running backs, which I think are good, and I think you could draft one this year. You have defensive backs almost across the board. Your inside linebacker group's fine. The Steelers have a lot of these pieces. They're needing a quarterback, and they need a couple of pieces here or there that can improve things. But I agree with you. I think they've built the rest of this thing, which is why over the next 3 or 4 years is why it's the most important that they win and figure out this quarterback thing, because the window is going to be strongest for them to go on a run with the rest of this team finally in place in the next couple of years.
Let's jump to Maddie, who says, rank your order of what quarterback you would take between Jackson Dart, Jalen Milroe, and Joe Milton.
If I had to choose between the three, and we'll remove draft picks from this and just say, or compensation, and just say, of these three, who would I rather? I'd go Jackson Dart first. I think he carries, the most middle ground there. Like the floor is low, but higher than Jalen Milroe's, and the potential is, maybe a little bit less than Jalen Milroe's all around, but I still think pretty high. I'd go Jackson Dart. I'd go Jalen Milroe next. I think his potential is massive. And then I go Joe Milton. Like, Joe Milton's exciting. He's cool, but I don't think NFL wise, I think he's a higher draft pick in this draft, but I don't think he's above Jalen Milroe or Jackson Dart. And from what I've heard, like, there's nobody that's super interested in Jalen Milroe in the NFL. They look at him and just say, he had one pretty cool game against a bunch of nobodies in Buffalo. And, it was nice, but it wasn't enough for everybody to be like, that's the guy, future starting quarterback in the NFL. Maybe, but, maybe not.
Yeah, nobody's falling for the Matt Flynn effect anymore after Seattle did that the 1 year.
No, yeah, shout out Russell Wilson, dude. Matt Flynn doesn't exist or go off in the second half of a nobody football game. Shout out Aaron Rodgers. Wow, small world, huh? Mm-hmm. Small world we live in. Russell Wilson never exists. So, shout out.
Let's go to Almost All-Star, who says, I think drafting a quarterback before the 5th round is like buying a lottery ticket with borrowed money. They need to draft defensive tackle, running back, defensive tackle again, and then their quarterback. What are your thoughts?
I think defensive tackle is their easiest grab with the biggest potential. I do. But there is no position in football more important than the quarterback. And if you are going to take a risk on the quarterback, I don't think it's good. I don't think its chances are super high, but there's always an argument to be made. Always. And these quarterbacks, like, look at Jackson Dart is better than what Kenny Pickett was coming into the NFL. Jalen Milroe's got way more upside. Like, people would say, like, oh, he's Malik Willis. He's nowhere close to Malik Willis. He is 20 times what Malik Willis was coming into the NFL. Like, Jalen Milroe is way better than that. The lottery ticket in this year's draft is better, but I hear you. I think running backs and defensive tackles are surefire things in this draft. And if you're going to play it safe, it's a good draft to get those things and to play it safe. If you're willing to take a lottery ticket and say, this is what we need, it's hard to argue against it, even if I wouldn't advise them to do it.
Let's go to Unlimited Moonballs, who says, I don't understand the negativity with the Steelers. We've been overachieving for years. We just need to fix a position that no organization fixes overnight. Let's all relax.
I agree. Look, I agree with a lot of this. The Steelers have, I think, damage control when it comes to relation within the NFL is important, and I think it's diminishing for the Steelers. But I also do look at the Pittsburgh Steelers over the I don't bring any of that into account. The Steelers have won with bad teams. Bad teams. The Steelers have not had a Super Bowl worthy team since 2017. Since 2017, the Steelers have not had a Super Bowl worthy team or anything close to a Super Bowl worthy team. They have just slowly been piecing this thing back together, but they're at the point where you got to either figure it out or it's going to get worse, or less and less is going to want to come here. Or, again, my thing is the Aaron Rodgers situation. That's where it looks bad, because if Aaron Rodgers is not involved, there is no magnifying glass. If they re-signed Russell Wilson, we're not talking about any of this. it's all behind you, and all we're doing is talking about how the Steelers have a quarterback that nobody believes in. They're boring. It's a boring team. But the Aaron Rodgers magnifying glass is as large as it gets in the NFL, and the longer it's there, the more everybody gets to realize the flaws in the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I think that is an issue, and one that, could be worth waiting it out for, and they clearly are waiting it out for, but it's not a good place to be, is under that magnifying glass.
Now, the wink at the end of this signifies to me that he is quoting who he believes is going to be the next quarterback of the Steelers. Relax. Don't you remember? RELAX. Relax, said Aaron Rodgers 10 years ago.
Oh, that's a good one. I didn't actually know that. When did he say that?
The Packers were like 1-2, and people were freaking out. And he said, relax. RELAX. Relax.
Wow, dude. Unlimited moonballs, man. That's smooth. That was smooth.
Let's go to Grayson, who says, hey, Nick and Noah, in your honest opinion, what is the worst case scenario for the Steelers next season? How bad can things truly get for the Pittsburgh Steelers? It seems like it's all doom and gloom in the Berg at the moment.
I think worst case scenario, and it's a lengthy explanation. I feel it's a lot lengthier than just like 8-6 or 8-10 or whatever it would be, is Mason Rudolph is your starting quarterback. He proves that he's not starting quarterback capable, and the Pittsburgh Steelers win 6 games, 7 games, 8 games. Now, the likelihood of that happening is slim, because even with Mason Rudolph not being a starting quarterback, the Steelers are going to win 9 games. That's just what they do. It's what Mike Tomlin does. But I would say that is worst case scenario for the Pittsburgh Steelers is Mason Rudolph is your starting quarterback, and he is not starting quarterback capable. And you just hope for the best at that point. That's worst case scenario.
And let's finish it off with Carl Spackler, who has a great question here. 20 years down the road, which backup QB has a better legacy in Pittsburgh, Mason Rudolph or Charlie Batch?
Oh, good old Charlie Batch always, dude. He's going to go down as a legend. He ain't leaving this city, man. Charlie Batch is the man. Mason's gone. That's my thing with Mason, okay? And I will continue. I said this yesterday, I think. Mason Rudolph retires, goes on The Bachelor because he's a perfect candidate for The Bachelor, becomes a movie star, and, lives the rest of his life as like a soap opera guy or something. He's just like, you don't see that in him. You don't look at the goatee and say this dude belongs on television somewhere, because I look at it and say this dude belongs on television somewhere. Charlie Batch out here taking photos every time it snows going, oh yeah, this is the greatest day ever, just to piss everybody off. That's Charlie Batch. He ain't, it's what you do afterwards as a backup quarterback that really cements you in a city. And Charlie Batch ain't leaving, man. Mason, he's a Southern boy. I got a hard time believing that he's planting his flag here in Pittsburgh and saying, this is where I'm going to spend the rest of my life. I love the city of Pittsburgh. If I was an NFL quarterback that retired and I didn't have kids going to school here or something, I would be somewhere warm, sunny, and again, on television, which is where I think Mason's going to end up.
That's a wrap for today, then.
Awesome. With that said, guys, we are heading out of here. Thank you so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. Make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/All Steelers Talk. Check us out anywhere you get your podcasts. And as always, find all of our work at si.com/NFL/Steelers. Remember, we will be back tomorrow morning to end the week. Hopefully we have some quarterback updates, but to be very honest with you, we probably won't, because this saga continues day and day and day. That's all right. We're enjoying every second of the ride. With that said, shout out to our members and all our super chatters, and we will be back tomorrow morning. Enjoy another beautiful day in the Berg. Peace.